Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am excited. This is going to be a very interesting conversation with an amazing group of men. My name is Shanieri Eze of Eze Health Center. This is the Eze Health Webcast Live. I do this every month where I bring on a number of panelists and experts from various fields of health and wellness to discuss important topics regarding that. So tonight we are talking about men's health. It is June is Men's Health Awareness Month. Um, Tonight we are going to focus on different key aspects of health and wellness in men, from physical, mental, emotional, relational, social, and spiritual. So from all different elements and aspects. I'm excited because I literally handpicked these amazing guests tonight. They are wonderful men in their own rights, very distinguished in the work that they do, very committed to the community and community service, families, the restoration of our communities, especially the Black communities. So I'm very honored to introduce each one of them. I'm going to start with Jeff Tyler. He is the speaker and CEO and founder of Good Men Do Exist. We want to welcome you, Mr. Tyler.
Thank you so much, Shanieri. It's an honor to be here. Grateful. I'm looking forward to everything that's going to transpire this evening. So, as Shanieri stated, everyone, I am the founder of Good Men Do Exist. Good Men Do Exist is a gentleman's lifestyle brand and movement with the mission to change the narrative of how men are viewed and treated in media and in society. And how we do that is there's several different aspects to it through mentoring, through brotherhood, community, fashion, and man empowerment. So we create safe spaces for men to have brotherhood and accountability, have healing, and be able to open up and share about their scars, about their weaknesses, about their strengths, and have the strength to be even better men for their communities, for their families, for society. And it's also a clothing brand, as you see right here. Uh, Also a clothing brand, and so that's the mission. I'm also an educator in Charles County. I am a third and fourth grade teacher at JP Ryan Elementary School as well. I've been in education for 7 years and in youth development period for about 10 years. Also, I'm also a preacher of the gospel as well, and served in ministry, worked in several different aspects of leadership in ministry. And most importantly, I've been married for 10 years to a beautiful, awesome, virtuous woman who has changed my life and just, given me the inspiration to be an even better man every day. So I love Jennifer Lucy Tyler, as I know she's watching as well. So that's just a little bit about me. More importantly, God is the foundation of my life, and everything is for Him. And He's Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and I'm just grateful to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we also are joined by Deron Tross. He's a community activist, founder of Charles County Matters, and is a candidate for the Charles County School Board. So welcome, Deron. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, coming behind Jeff, man, that's a tough one. uh, I'm a child of the King. I believe in God. He is my, my being, my all in all. But most of all, I'm an advocate for kids. I am my story is nothing new. Uh, I'm dyslexic. I have a learning disability, and I just decided once I moved here to get involved in the system. I'm a graduate of University of Nebraska. I have a master's in public administration from George Mason University. I have a MPA from Villanova. Um, education for me is, even though I have some pieces, three pieces of paper, it's been a grind. It's been a journey. But most important, I want what's best for kids. I don't want to see truly no child left behind. And I truly believe in advocating for kids in my community. Up until this past February, I had no idea I was going to run for office. I didn't want to get into it, and then after prayer and then talking to some friends, I decided to do it. It's not easy. Sometimes it gets lonely, but at the same time, I do believe I'm doing this for a reason, and I have a passion. But again, that's who I am. Raw. What you see is what you get at all times, 24/7, 365 days a year. That's it, folks.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Deron. Appreciate it. And last but not least, we have Mr. Lamar N. Robinson. He's a community service advocate as well as CEO of Kingdom Business Clothing. Uh, Welcome, Lamar. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So first of all, before I even start, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm still having some audio issues. So I'm going to act like I'm in class. So if you want me to stop talking, just raise your hand and I will stop. First of all, I want to say, this brother say stop now. First of all, I want to thank God for just the opportunity that I have to even be in the position to utilize all the gifts and talents he's provided me with to be transformational. Shaneri, I thank you again for this platform and all the kings that sit in front of me. I believe this is such a tremendous opportunity that we do have to be able to encourage or to empower somebody right now that is tuning in. I would also say I had a great time in February. Remember you and I got together and we had a really great forum. And I'm so glad that you gave me this opportunity to stand in the gap for a gentleman that is also an amazing individual, Mr. Cook. And I'm so thankful to just be invited and to be a part of this platform. I do want to thank everyone who is tuning in that are showing love, family, friends, loved ones, those that have taken time out of their busy schedule to lock into this platform to really hear what we have to say concerning Black men, but just not Black men, holistically, the entire Black community and anybody that feels so disposed to want to transform their life for the greater cause. And I lastly want to say I do have a brand, a business. It is Kingdom Business Clothing. I got one of my polos on too, like my man do over there. Good men do exist, and it is a platform. And all we're trying to do with KBC is to unite, encourage, and to excite folks to draw them closer to God, and for individuals to really find out what their purpose on this earth is. I believe we're all called on this universe to do something great, and it's just trying to figure out what those things are. And so therefore I have a website. We'll talk a little more about that later. But what's important is the mission. Grandma would always say a sermon is better seen and not heard. And so I grew up with that concept that folks want to see you get to work rather than hear all the stuff that you say you're going to do. And so I'm so excited for this platform, and I'm looking forward to the furthering of our discussion. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So you all see why I picked these guys. Amazing, amazing. I really appreciate you all joining us tonight. So we're going to jump right into it. Like I mentioned earlier in the webcast, we're going to talk about it all. Every single different element of health and wellness, particularly, regarding men. I was talking to Jeff earlier. We were saying how often men's health gets ignored or sidetracked. Not enough attention is paid to it. And even more so in regards to mental and emotional health as well, which we're really going to delve deep in tonight. I, as a healthcare practitioner, I've been in practicing medicine for over 15 years. I've seen how, elements of mental and emotional health can impact someone physically and even lead to, ongoing chronic illness and disease. The thing about how stress in particular, which I think all of us have experienced during this pandemic in one way or another, and even now with the recession, gas prices, economic turmoil, social turmoil, it's a lot going on in this world now. So it's causing people a lot of stress, right? So there are a number of different things that can actually happen to you physically, as a result of stress. Increased incidence of hypertension, heart disease, stroke, So really understanding how our stress in particular can impact men's health. Now, what we see, especially in men, is that there are higher incidences of stress-related heart disease, heart attacks, literal death as a result of stress. And a lot of it can come from burnout. So I don't know if any of you men have experienced burnout, but it's essentially when there's such a high and prolonged amount of stress that it causes physical manifestations. And what is recognized as these early signs of burnout: loss of focus, exhaustion, negative thinking, irritability, inefficiency and lack of productivity, substance abuse, and the things I named earlier, the hypertension, the heart disease. These are all the things that can culminate. So have any of you ever experienced burnout, or have even encountered someone who has, whether it's a relative, a friend, who's maybe needed medical intervention, hospitalization as a result of it? Oh, I think Jeff,
Yes, I. Oh, okay. Yes, I have. You know, it's hypertension. We call it high blood pressure. Diabetes runs in my family. I saw insulin twice a day. My grandmother. That's on one side of the family, then the other side of the family. So I decided a long time ago that I was not going to be one of. I love my family. I wasn't going to allow that to happen to myself. So we say everything is in moderation, which is important. But also, from a stress level, you have to have the ability not a lot of those things can happen, but also you have to have a way of getting away, of doing something else. I referee college football. I referee high school basketball. That is my way of doing something else. I like to work out. I like a good cigar. That allows me just some downtime to. And there's a lot of things. Here in Charles County, I'm very involved. There's a lot of things that go on. So I try to do different things like that. Like the last couple of weeks, we had the Linganore Wine Festival. That was an opportunity for me to just get out and with some friends and drink some wine. We had the jazz festival, a way for me to get away, do some things, just unwind, and all the. So I had all this going, having a full-time job. So you have to have something to get you away, and just take your mind off of some of those things. Even though the stress is going to be there, and some of the same problems or things that you go through in life, they're still going to be there. You have to have the ability to just say, okay, focus on something else for the meantime. That's just me, how I deal. But I've had friends. Last year I had 2 friends that committed suicide. I've had some folks who are doing different things, but my last, and I know that you about it on my page. I'm a big proponent of therapy. I see a therapist right now today. I see a therapist every first of the month, every first Friday. I see my therapist is the best $25 that copay that money can buy. And that's all I have to say about that.
All right, thanks for sharing. You brought up a lot of good points, and condolences for the loss of your 2 friends. We want to address these issues before it gets to that point. So I know Jeff, you had something to share as well.
Yes, ma'am, and my condolences definitely to Deron, the D, for the loss of those friends, man, for sure. One thing we know is that our mental health, and especially our mental health as men holistically, is nothing to play with. And as far as to the burnout, it's funny. I'm a teacher, as you guys know, and I love my job. And it's more than a job to me; it's a calling. It's a passion that I have for leaving a deposit in the next generation. But even in the midst of doing that, I think what was key for me this year, especially with students coming back in person to school from the pandemic, it created To be honest, in globally, nationally, a teacher crisis.
Mm,
Um, there was a huge. It's been all in the news, and any educators watching knows that there have been a high number of educators either leaving the profession or finding other careers or suffering from burnout. I think in my case, even though I love getting up each day and doing what I do and depositing in my students, for me, at one point, I experienced teacher burnout and I didn't know I did.
mm,
I think that happens to a lot of men. There are times that we run on fumes and we are so used to hustling and grinding and working and trying to do for our families. And, you know, never is it really emphasized for us to stop, pause, and think about our health and care for our well being. And it's funny, I was talking to my wife, and when I unpacked things with her, I realized there was a point during the school year that I experienced burnout and I didn't know I did because of it came through when a situation happened with one of my students where they were mistreated by other students, and my reaction, I was angry. And I didn't do anything that would cause me to lose my job, of course, but I could see in my response that I said, wait a minute, this isn't how I normally react, but I cared about my students so much that
mm.
I didn't realize at that point my response to the situation, it was understandable, it's justified in how I felt about it. And I went about going through the proper channels. But the anger that I had, I said, I was burned out. I was really tired and I was not getting enough rest. And so sometimes for me, this week, I just got back from West Palm Beach. I was out of town with my wife and I had time to really sit and reflect and rest and realize that and prior to that I had not worked out for months. And so
Mm,
about a month ago I went back to exercising, doing my workouts, doing my boot camp, and I really felt more energy again, felt good again. It really felt good to be back in the gym. It works wonders. But I think at that point I had to stop and realize, wow, I didn't realize that I was really exhausted and tired, and that affects how we approach situations. It's funny, Shanier, you mentioned talked about the signs of burnout. According to the New York Times, they did a write up about burnout in men, and three signs that we can look for, which some of them you mentioned were definitely exhaustion, cynicism, and the feeling of ineffectiveness.
cynicism.
Yeah, and that cynicism is you
Mm,
right. I can hear you, Lamar. That cynicism is real because cynicism is when we begin to see coworkers, people we work with, and even in the case for teachers, you can see students, you can see other people as problems instead of people you're there to help or service. You start to see things that you shouldn't as an annoyance. Cynicism that it can set in when there's burnout. And many men, even though we don't communicate it honestly or haven't been taught how to express it, we deal with feelings of ineffectiveness, feeling like we're not enough. And then feeling unappreciated adds to that. And so what happens is a man creates a version of himself unknowingly that just survives and it's just there, but it's not really there. So that and and I've seen other men have burnout as well, and other people deal with stress or have social anxiety, and so and it's definitely nothing to play with. They've had to take time to really step away and really rest. And I can honestly say, I my experience is I just met with my therapist for the first time last week, and I felt really proud. Yes, I mean I was happy about that. But I'll even be open to say when I first met with him and started talking about what my school year, who I am, what I dealt with, I just broke down and cried in front of him, and I did not know why. And I said, "Where is all this coming from?" And even in that, I found that I have spent so much time with students, with people, just trying to help that I haven't had time to catch up with me yet.
mm,
And I want to do right and want so much to go well, but I realize that hey, I really need to take some time to spend time with God. To really, this summer vacation came right on time. I needed to rest. I needed to unpack some things. I need to, spend more time with my wife. Spend more time catching up with me and finding out how Jeff can be a better him. So I hope that helps somebody.
And,
Absolutely.
and
You brought up
Lamar,
points.
before you say, I'm
Oh, Darren, you're going in and out. I'm sorry. Say that again.
when Jeff said that, he met with his therapist and he cried. I had a tear came down my eyes, my face, because it wasn't a set of onions, but
Yeah.
I talk to Dr. Chenry all the time. I mean, Ms. Chenry, that crying is a good thing. Jesus cried on the cross, and not saying that I'm Jesus, but it's an emotional. I could sit and watch a movie or a television series or something that, and I wasn't like this before, but just working with my therapist, that I know it's okay to cry. It doesn't make me weak. It's an emotional thing. So when I cry, it's a blessing. So I sorry to interrupt you. I just had to when he said
Oh,
that,
thank
I had tears down my face. I just had to say that.
you. Already starting. Yes, sir.
I wanted to say, first of all, brothers, I appreciate y'all being transparent and being as open as you are about some of the feelings that most of us may have, and I've learned if you don't have an interconnectedness with someone, you may not even express how you feel. You got to have a certain type of relationship with someone to be able to be as open and honest with them. And so, it's not easy to come on a camera in front of so many others that's streaming in and say, this is what I've experienced. These are the things that I've dealt with. These are the circumstances I'm working through. But me personally, I'm always burnt out. I am so used to driving my vehicle on E, figuratively speaking. I'm the car, and it's always on E. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna get to the next block. It's gonna happen. I'm so used to driving this car on E until you get to a place where the car is like, I'm done, I'm tired, and it stops. And unfortunately, that may equate to things happening to us physically, mentally, right, socially, spiritually. And so I've actually, to be honest with you, have exercised the word no. I've gotten to a place in my walk where I have really been comfortable with saying no. And at one particular time, I felt that I had to be the Superman for everybody. And it's not even just a current situation. I really believe that this is also a generational thing. And that's something that I believe we're going to talk about a little later, especially as Black and brown people, and especially as Black men and women. Generationally, we've never had an opportunity to slow down. We've never had an opportunity to get to it. And we talked about this on the last webcast. We never got to an opportunity to memorialize some of the things that we want to leave behind. We've never gotten to the opportunity to really cut ties with some things for good, and even to establish boundaries so we can be healthy. There's a book that I read that a friend of mine referred me to, and if anybody is streaming and interested in checking this book out, is entitled Boundaries: When to Say Yes and How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life. Boundaries: When to Say Yes and How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life is by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. It's a good book. It's different books on
I've
boundaries.
read that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you read that before? Yeah, it's a really
Yeah,
good book
it's a good one.
good book on relationships. Good book on those that are single looking for someone to marry, those that are in that process of transitioning to the next phase, and those individuals that may be married. Other areas and components that will help you define boundaries for yourself. And I believe all of us need to have that. We all need to be in a position to say no, and just be. This is something that I shared with Scenario offline on yesterday. Sometimes just be. It's okay to just be in that moment. It's okay to be okay with where you are. And I think we're going to highlight this a little later because we get so caught up and we get so distracted by everything around us that if you don't be careful, you allow those things, those circumstances to define what you were not purposed to do. And you'll find yourself trying to, as older folks would say, catch up with the Joneses. Remember that thought? I got to catch up with the Joneses. I got to do what everybody else is doing. And if I don't do what this person is doing, I feel inadequate. And especially when it comes to Black people in the States, in the US of A and worldwide, inadequacy is a part of our generation because we are always considered to be second-class citizens and doing first-class things. And so, and that's something I know we'll be talking about a little later. But yeah, burnouts happen, but we have to get to a place in our walk where we begin to say no. And sometimes that no will save your life. It will save your life.
That's good.
I can't hear you, Shanari. Can't hear you. Do any of us know sign language?
Yeah.
So we can get through this thing. Would be great. I took it, but I don't remember any of it. That's so bad. It was a prerequisite for my degree. And I didn't remember it at all. This could have been beneficial. I think she's gonna write out. Are you gonna write? I know you're not gonna write what you're saying.
Gonna transcribe it, put it in the chat. Let me see. Yeah. Well, I'm seeing a lot of there she is.
Am I here now? Okay. Technology is something else. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can. You're good.
Sound great.
All right, great. So I apologize for that. So what I was saying was each of you shared some really good points in regards to how burnout can be presented, your personal experiences of burnout, and also offering solutions. That's one of the things that I really want to go into as we talk about all these issues regarding men's health, talking about solutions. So we mentioned boundaries, we mentioned me time, we mentioned therapy. So these are some things to explore as far as how do we get through these issues. Now, another thing I want to transition to, which Lamar mentioned, is this idea of self-perception and self-esteem, especially amongst men. Again, when it comes to things like self-esteem, it tends to be what a woman feels about, her own self-esteem. Do we really talk about self-esteem in men much, right? So knowing, how important is how a man views himself impact his self-esteem and place in the world. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. How a man views himself and self-perception. How does that impact him?
It impacts a lot on how you view yourself. Trust me, I'm gonna use this term. It gets lonely at the top, and I don't mean
5 heartbeats.
I don't mean that I'm at the top, but being a Black man, a Black male, you have to always we're perceived different than anyone else. We are supposed to be tough. We are taught, don't cry. We are taught to man up. This latest sensation that you said, a real man. That's a preconceived notion about a real man. The true definition of a real man is Jesus Christ. He was on the cross, and on the third day he got up with all power in his hand. That's the true definition of a real man. But in this journey in life, it's a journey. There's no manual on this. So when I view myself as, I always try to be positive to all my brothers and my sisters, blue, black, white, or green. I always try to be positive. But unfortunately, I have the ability, and we talked about this earlier, when folks bring me some energy, I usually give back the same energy I get. You know what I mean? But I always try to be positive, and just see good in everyone, no matter what. Everyone has some good in them. I was looking at something, and I was going to say this to my brother who passed away last firm. Last year, y'all fighting consequences of your choice. So say, you know, something that's for everything. It's just a consequence of the choice that we make. And that's what we have to wait on to be helps.
All right, Deron, I think we're having some technical issues. All right. Okay, so I think we may have missed a little bit about of what you shared. Again, some technical issues, but thank you. So again, getting back to, you know, how men perceive themselves and how they feel when they don't, you know, feel that they measure up. What are your perspectives on that?
Absolutely. How we how we view ourselves affects how we show up in other areas of life. It even affects how we show up in our relationships with women, with other men. It affects that heavily. You know, a best friend of mine, if he's watching, BJ, thank you. He told me this a few days ago when I was just being transparent with him about some things that I was personally struggling with. And this is where we go back to the importance of having brotherhood and community. He said, Jeff, what I want you to start doing every day, when you wake up, go in the bathroom, look in the mirror, and I want you to look at yourself and say, it is good. And it's to some people that may sound like, what? But for me, it has really been helpful. Go in the mirror and say, it is good. He said, it's okay to affirm yourself as a man. It's okay to accept yourself. You know, and I learned a long time ago because my parents raised me and did their very best to instill self confidence and taught me that you were created in the image of God. Do you know if you hate yourself or you don't love you, that's a slap in his face? When you neglect the product, you insult the manufacturer. It's a slap in the manufacturer's face because they created that product to operate with efficiency for a purpose. And so that self confidence is very key. And it would amaze a lot of women how many of us men, especially black men, struggle with low self esteem. But from the outside, because we've been trained to have a tough exterior and been trained to look like we don't look like we have it all together when we really don't. On the inside, we're really broken. And there's certain aggressive behaviors and certain things that we do that we've been trained to do to put on a facade to not appear soft. And it all depends. It is different for every man. I don't like putting guys in a box because everybody's different. You know, every man manifests that differently though. And so, you know, it's insecurity can drive a lot of it can drive us to do a lot of things. A lot of times the hard exterior, I think Deron mentioned it earlier, the hard exterior, it is often a cover up for something that's really missing on the inside, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to coincide in what Jeffrey was talking about too, and I don't want to take too long because I know we have a lot to discuss. But um, and we know even from a spiritual perspective, the trichotomy: body, soul, and mind. But when you look at being a man, then being a black man, and then if you are considered to yourself to be a spiritual man, those three components are heavy. It's a lot of work that needs to take place in order to enhance each characteristic of each one of those beings. And so, if you're not in a position to do the best that you can, as we talked about before, to seek the help that you need to receive, it's going to be very hard for you to live out the full purpose that you were placed on this universe to live out. I think we probably lost our brother. And so there was something that Jeffrey talked about. He talked about inadequacies. And I wanted to say something really quickly. I truly believe, I love God. I am a Christian. That's what I consider myself to be. And I say that sincerely, and I say that in a way of conviction. But inadequacies, and I've been writing while you've all been talking and taking notes. But inadequacies and fear doesn't come from God at all. And I truly believe there is a design order that is set in place that will provide all men, black, women, black. I believe there is something that we are, and I said this before, purpose in this life to be doing. And the attributes that I see folks disappearing and they're coming back.
All right, I apologize.
I feel like this is like
Lamar.
the Avengers. We're like assembling the team
Yep.
for the end game. I'm Captain America. I just want to be clear about that. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Wakanda forever over here.
Okay, well, listen. We need you, bro. I see. I don't know. Are you Iron Man? Deron?
He's Iron Man.
Is Shanari Captain Marvel, or is she like Widow?
All right, hold on now.
Trying to figure out where we at.
All right.
Hey, Grandma would say there's nothing but the devil here. Preventing the growth of us sharing these thoughts to encourage us to be better.
All right.
Sorry, y'all, a little technical difficulty there.
All right.
Are we still live? I'll just continue. Do you mind?
Yeah, I was just saying continue. You want to roll.
Yeah. So what I was saying is, in order for us to seize the attributes that will make us as Black men be able to reach the full growth of a human being, I think we have to be very clear. And I want to say this, and I know this is very important because this is the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
What we are not really addressing is there is a constant battle of the mind. Period. In everything that we do, in everything that we're trying to be, there is a perception and a misconception of what we need or what we should be.
Yeah.
And in actuality, none of that stuff is real. It's not real at all. It's a phallus. It's not real at all. And I actually had to, for me personally, I had to get off social media for about a week or two because it was completely creating imagery in my mind where I felt as if that I was missing out. I was in a position where I felt like I was inadequate. I was in a position where I felt like, something is missing, and what is that which is missing? And I had to take some time to really remove myself from social media, a place that is completely imaginatory, is fiction, is unreal. And we get to this place where we'll see imagery, we'll see situations, we'll hear situations, we'll come across situations. And we as a people, as Black men especially, will define ourselves based on those criteria that are not even real. And so I had to remove myself from social media just for a little bit so I can be able to get back to Lamar.
Wow.
And that was for me. And other individuals may have some other circumstances for them which create adversity which they can't maneuver through, where they may need to discipline themselves to say, hey, this is something that I need to do that will help me in my situation. And so that was something, to be open with you, brothers, and my queen is back on, that I had to eliminate for a time being, because I realized the battle of the mind. I realized the mind is so important, and everything that's fixated around us is not pulling away us mainly physically. It's really tapping into our mind. And I believe three areas it's either causing us mentally to shift, it's controlling how we process and think, or it's dismantling it, period. It's destroying it. Those three facet areas of how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive our community, how we perceive others, we're either shifting away from the design order that I believe God has placed there for all of us to live through, or either we are being controlled to process a certain way, or we are just not thinkers at all. We're literally robots, finagling through life like the missing link, trying to find purpose, running after the wind. And the moment the wind stops, we're like, where am I going? What
Right.
am I supposed to be doing? Why am I here? And so that's what I feel. I feel like we have a battle of the mind. We have a battle of the consciousness. A lot of folks think that, I believe the heart is the mind. Scripture says, so the man thinking in his heart, so is he. So I believe the heart is the mind. I don't believe it's the organ that pumps blood to the body. If it stops, I get it, the body dies. But I believe there is something that we have that supersedes the organ that we manifest, and it's our consciousness. It's literally how we perceive ourselves, and oftentimes, to be frank, how others perceive us too, based upon these external factors, these systems that's configured around us, in which we may feel that we are inadequate or we are adequate. And I think when we control the way that we process, other things would be um, a little more easier to handle.
Absolutely. So it's really understanding and yourself, knowing yourself, uh, more self-aware and accepting of yourself. I like just how you mentioned having affirmations. I'm a big believer in that. Even when, I have two daughters, and from the time they could talk, we would do affirmations in front of the mirror. I'm beautiful, I'm brilliant, I'm blessed. And I'd have them,
Mm,
I have a little hand mirror and they say that where
wow.
so to the point where when they go in the mirror, those words will automatically come into their mind. So it's really of almost program yourself to love yourself, be self-accepting, don't suppress these emotions, because suppressed emotions can cause some real damage. I mean,
Mm,
we just saw it a few months ago in a very real way, and it got a conversation going. All of us saw how Will Smith, our most beloved Will Smith,
yes.
lost his mind.
He's human. He's human like everybody else. I mean,
Yeah.
Yes. And that
Mhm.
is a show of humanity because we all have that propensity to do that. If we
Mhm.
suppress our emotions enough, if we try to smile in front of the camera when inside we're dying and not getting the help and support we need, it's I call it when emotions go wrong, right? So
Mhm.
with men especially, and I'm not one to speak on it, but all of you mentioned to some degree how men are almost programmed to suppress and reduce any element of them that is off. So how is it that, how does a man's negative emotional state transform into outward aggression? Like what we saw, on Oscar stage, any commentary on that? I'd love to hear it.
can you repeat that question one more time? How can a man's emotion say that? I couldn't hear you.
How does a man's negative emotional state transform into outward aggression?
So I was reading this article. It was the power of the nature of the mind and its awareness, and I just want to share something with those that are streaming with us and listening, and for my and on my forum here. It said the mind is, listen to this. It says the mind is the universal biases of all experiences. It is the creator of happiness and the creator of suffering. So we got two phases: creator of happiness and creator of suffering. And then it says the mind shapes and leads every single thing we do, as well as all that we perceive around us. And then it also goes on to say, in fact, all of our actions are geared toward this goal, toward what we perceive to be happiness and away from what we view as suffering. And yet we have no real understanding of how to achieve any of it. And so this whole idea of what we're talking about with Will Smith and the whole incident that took place and occurred, and not just with him, but just all of us, man, black men as a whole. We are living in a time where, and I just talked about this earlier, where what we think is aspirational, what we think is an accomplishment, what we think is a triumph, those things will change depending on how life changes. I remember I watched this TikTok probably a couple weeks ago, and this was a joke. This girl was uh, in her 20s. It said, in my 20s. And she was naming all of the things that she wanted in a man. So she was like, I want him to be God fearing. I want him to have a job. I want him to not have children. I want a beautiful smile. I want him to have a car in his own place. And then she was like, and I want him to love his mama. And then by the time she got to the 30s, now here we go. Circumstances changes, life is changes. And she was like, all I wanted to make sure that his hairline was real. That was it. She got to a place.
Wow.
I mean, it was a joke, but by the time she got to her
The
30s,
standards change.
it changed. The
Yeah.
desire that we had changed. The feelings that we had for what we wanted changed. How we mentally perceive something and what we desire to have to complete us or in some sense complement us changed. And so you
Yeah.
have this gentleman, Will Smith. We got to look at him as a whole. We're talking about a beloved individual that has a lot of dysfunction that's taking place in his home. We're looking at how others perceive him, how he perceives himself, things that he's battling with outside of the normalcy of his life, things he's internally dealing with. We don't know if he's a child of God or not. I have no idea. I don't know his relationship. But what I'm telling you is this is the totality of a human being living in a world that has rules, regulations, systems, biases, prejudices, unequal stereotypes, discrimination, and he has to thrive in all of these different components as a black male. And so it's
Yeah.
difficult to say why wouldn't you do what you did or how could you and not really understand the complexities of this man's life. And
Mm.
this is a celebrity. So if a celebrity can turn up like that, what can a regular African American day to day 9 to 5? What are we thinking about? How are we processing things? How are we looking at life internally? How are we looking at it from an intro retro perspective?
That's right.
We don't even think about that. If this brother can, at the highest extent of his career, turn up like that, then you got to be mindful of when you see normal folk in the environment in our society or in our community making these bad choices, and then we say to ourselves, "How could he do that? How could she do that?
Right.
Where are they? How
Yeah.
are they feeling? What are they experiencing?" And then
Mm.
the last question is, what are they missing? What do they not have that is making them whole? And a
Mm.
lot of us are not trying to answer that question. And like I said before, I'm a strong believer in God, but you cannot have a secular world and act and expect a secular world to act out in a spiritual way. It doesn't make any sense. It is oil and vinegar. They don't mix. And so you got to be able to put things in order and create and put things in the proper perspective and acknowledge it for what it is. And I think what we're doing oftentimes is we're not really acknowledging truth. We're bypassing it because we want to accommodate people. We don't want to offend others. We want to assimilate in our situations. We work so hard to get where we are. And now that we are where we are, we don't want to say anything to make us go back. We done got to the front of the bus. It was hard to get up here. And now that where I'm at, I'm not trying to get back to the back of the bus. And oftentimes when we do that, we do a disservice not only to ourselves, but we do a disservice to our community. And so that's a powerful comment about Will Smith. Do we love that brother, pray for that brother, encourage that brother, or do we say, listen, Will Smith is us? We talked about that scenario offline. Will Smith is us at any time. How do we get to a place where we can get the correct healing and be in a position where we can work through not getting to the place where Will Smith got to?
Yeah, Lamar. It's you said something when that situation first happened, and I was unpacking it with some friends. I said that could have been me.
Yeah,
Before I go and rip him up or pass judgment, first of all, I don't deal with the daily pressures that he deals with, the fame,
Mhm.
the influence, the status that he has, and none of us, unless except with an exception of those who are close to them, truly knows what's going on in that home.
mm,
For certain. But my assessment of it was it took me back to, and I have his book, which is a very good read.
oh,
Um,
this brother promote for Will. Oh, this
yeah,
brother.
he's one of the best storytellers I've ever heard. But he said something that made me think about the Oscars incident. In the book, Will said when he was young, he saw his father punch his mother so hard, abuse her. He knocked her to the floor,
Mm,
and he was paralyzed. He said at that moment, I felt like a coward
because he
because
couldn't
I
defend his
did
mother.
nothing. I felt like a coward because I did not act and I did nothing to defend my mother. And from then on, he said, I never want to be a coward ever again. And I'm not saying this is why, because I don't, know what was in his mind when he actually slapped Chris Rock. But my opinion was that that slap was for everyone Will could not hit because of all of the pressure mounting up. He had already been in the media for what was happening with him and Jada through the entanglement that the entanglements that we talked about. There's so much that happened, and it made me wonder at that moment. Him getting up there, I think Chris Rock's statement, that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't necessarily even Chris Rock, in my opinion. Again, that was the focal point of the problem. It was more to it than that. And so that was a release of everything that he had already been experiencing. And I've learned that just because everything looks peaceful on the surface doesn't mean that there isn't turmoil underneath. And it made me wonder, he felt like a coward with his mom. At that moment, could the childhood trauma that Will experienced with his mom led him to saying, you know what, even in this moment with my wife, if I don't respond, am I being a coward? And so that's just a question.
Deron, I had a question for Deron to coincide with what you were saying, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you deal with sports, correct? You said you're a coach and you coach certain aspects of sports. Can I ask you a question, just behaviorally and emotionally? What are some of the things that you see in some of the young men that you coach or you mentor? And then what are some of the ways that you are able to help, in some sense, control, how they feel and the perception that they think they're receiving if they don't act out a certain way?
Well, I'm an official. I'm a guy with the church, so I from what I do see out there on the field. I see some young men, and we talked about Will, with some unchecked childhood trauma that needs to be harnessed. I'm gonna go back to the Will Smith thing real quickly, and then I'm gonna reverse back. We talk about Will, but what about Chris?
Yeah.
He was humiliated. A slap. When you slap a man, that's one of the most humiliating things you can do.
Yeah, disrespectful.
It's also a form of disrespect.
I can tell you, it was when you sit up front at comic shows, I mean, anything can go. Anything goes. As for me, we'll pick the right one. Because had it been me, we'd probably still be on there in Hollywood. But, I think Will and Jada needs to take some time for themselves and figure out what's going on with them.
Yeah.
And then he also I think Will owes the national audience, his fans, and Chris a public apology. That's just my. But as Jeffrey said, there's some unchecked childhood trauma that's going on that he needs to deal with, and I always say he needs to tell his wife stay off of social media. But we'll get back into the other trauma, which you see some kids. Four downs. And then the ball is hiked. You get to deal with some more aggressions. And, but I see kids, college kids, after the play, swinging at each other. A lot of aggression. The play's over. You can go into the next one. In basketball, when I'm officiating basketball, I see the same thing. And I said something to Shinri earlier, and I'm going to say it. In the 80s, I'm older than all you guys. I'm 56. I'll be 57 in September. We had the crack epidemic.
Yeah.
And we have never, as a society in the African American community, dealt with that. So there's some unchecked trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Now you had, we call them, I don't call them crackheads, that whole crack epidemic, but You have the folks that are my age that was using it, that never was able to deal with their trauma. Now their kids are having babies. So what we have a generational issue of unchecked trauma. Uh, and on top of that, we're still dealing with trauma of, slavery. We're still dealing with trauma of, mom and dad not being together, some other trauma. So, we have as I said, I believe my mother died almost 8 years ago. And I went for grief counseling and was able to fix some other things personally and professionally. So it's important that we deal with those traumas. It's not you have a bunch of young men that are going to marry our daughters with this trauma hasn't been checked, and then it just continues on. So I always tell. I was walking the other day. I saw a young brother was very aggressive over at the dad, and I stopped. I just stopped and said, "Hey man, what's going on? Why are you yelling at this woman like this?" Well, she did this. I said, "I get it. You need to understand when you do this in public, you're in a no-win situation, you brother. I'm not saying go home and do something else, but calm down, man. It's not worth it, for you to sit there and call a woman out of her name and everything in the book, and then turn around and say you're gonna love her. And some things, once you put that out in the atmosphere, you can't take it back. So we talk about unchecked trauma. We if I saw Jeffrey, if I saw him off, I saw you out in the streets tomorrow, and I saw something that was going on, I'm gonna say, hey man, everything's okay. It is truly I am my brother's keeper. Even if I see Sherry, if I see her all the time, and if she doesn't look, something's up. Hey, what's going on, sis? We want to talk about it. It's important. And my last thing, during COVID last year, I was in a Target. Had a lot going on. We couldn't, folks couldn't see their therapists, in one-on-one. And now that wasn't last year before, right in the heart of it. And I'm sitting in Target, and I just happened to was talking to another brother from the community, and my therapist walked by. Say, hey, Deron, how you doing? So I said, how you doing there, blah, blah, blah. He said, you all right? And I said, yes, I was. I said, I'm all right. And I went ahead and paid for my items, and something said, I waited for him to come out because I wasn't all right. So a lot of times when we see each other, we say we all right, we not all right. So
we automatically,
you have to check. We talk about checking those emotions. There's so much going on in my community. And I'm running for office. And man, I told the other day I need to do every other week. Because there's a lot of unchecked emotions. But we have to hold each other accountable for our emotions and this trauma that's going on in our community. We can't. We have to uplift one another. I have to deal with what's going on in the media, then I have to deal with other folks. I call it these thorns in my side. That's biblically. I have to deal with that too. So it's two pronged. So when I lay down at night, sometimes I cry. Sometimes I pray. Sometimes I call a friend and we talk about it, and then I have the ability to just kind of departmentalize it. Put that on, I deal with it. But that unchecked trauma in our community, we have to deal with, because if we don't deal with it, our kids will continue on with our kids in a cycle. Jeffrey, you're a teacher, you see it in the schools. Lamar, you're doing some other things in the community, you see it.
I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to say one of the things that we also have to acknowledge, we're so consumed with so much stuff, man. So much is happening all around us in every facet, from the churchyard to the community to social media, politically, we're talking about medically, especially as Black folks, we're like always on the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we're always watchful, always anticipating, always waiting for the next situation or circumstance to happen. One of the things that I did appreciate, after the incident happened with Will Smith, and I'm not justifying what he did, oftentimes a lot of us are not even asking Chris Rock how he felt for the situation, because there's some traumas that he experienced as a child. There's some things that was reintroduced to him that he had, in some sense, made peace with. Being bullied when he was much younger. Things of that nature. And now this bullying situation takes place again, right? But what I wanted to say is, you got a chance to see Will Smith's elder in Denzel Washington
Yes,
be able to console him and talk with him and encourage him. I don't necessarily know what was said, but that is so important in the black community, especially among black men. And I know we're going to get to that place in mentorship, but just to be able to bridge that generational gap and to see someone that is much older, to be able to, like you do as a coach, to be able to reach out to that person that is much younger, that person looks up to and values and appreciates the transparency that that individual can give them. To say, hey, calm down. It's not appropriate. We're going to get through this. Take some deep breaths. Relax yourself. Don't make bad choices. Think about the next steps. It's really good to be able to bridge that generational gap where we can take those that have the wisdom and knowledge to be able to help compose those that have all the energy and get them to a place of balance. And so I think that was a great thing that we did see with Denzel Washington, Tyler Perry, and other individuals that had an
absolutely,
opportunity to really talk to him and give him some wisdom and some advice for that night.
I have
absolutely.
one question. I have one question, and I'm not bashing Will. We
Scenario,
saw
you like
Tyler.
frozen? Are you there? I don't know if she. I don't know if she's moving or not. Or
I'm there. I'm here.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
sir.
We can. I can hear you good.
Will, but we saw Tyler Perry. We saw Denzel Washington and someone else counsel, Love or Will. But that night, we didn't see anyone go to Chris's aid. At least I didn't see it.
Mm.
No one went, to my knowledge, no one went to see how he was doing.
Mm.
Can you repeat that, Jeffrey? I can hear you.
Yeah.
What
Folks
did you
went
say?
out to see Denzel Washington, Tyler Perry,
Mhm.
and others about Will. We didn't see who went to see about Chris Rock. We didn't see that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Select. They're very selective. Very selective.
We, we had two men was hurt that night.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point you're making,
Good
and I
point.
think and I think that's, to me, important. That's why I think community is valued. When I say community, I'm not selective in community. I think it's all of our responsibility to look out for each other. I think it's the man's responsibility to take care of the home, to take care of his family, to look out for that woman. I think vice versa is also her responsibility to pour into her man, her family. I think this is a team effort. It's a team effort. I believe we're all we have. And that is a great point that you did. I don't necessarily know if anybody said anything to Chris Rock after the show, at the awards parties. We don't know, but you are absolutely right. What we've seen, and that's another thing too. You got to be mindful of this. Please be mindful. We talked about earlier the battle of the minds. The media, which is controlled not by us, showed us somebody that that at the moment had all the attention and showed that individual being encouraged and motivated, and didn't show Chris Rock, didn't show how he felt. Could have been the reason why they didn't show it. May have been a reason to help the ratings. We don't necessarily know, but these systems are configured in some ways where they don't really work in our favor. And I've learned with social media and in business, perception is everything. When you're looking at, like, and this is another aspect that we don't talk about often as black folks. How are we perceived across the world?
Yep.
Perception is everything. Like, and so,
Yeah.
we're getting into big schools. We're living into nice areas. We have really great jobs. We're doing some tremendous work in life. But what is the perception? How are black men and women being perceived across the board? And so that was what we've seen, but we don't necessarily, I can't, that's a good point, but I can't say that we don't know if Denzel wasn't supported.
Yeah. W.E.B. Du Bois in his work, The Souls of Black Folks, speaks to exactly
Hmm.
what you just said, Lamar. That in America, uh, black people have had to deal with what's called the double consciousness. We've
Yeah.
had to deal with how we are perceived in the eyes of white America and our own self identity and self esteem growing as black people and knowing who we are. And these are two part these this is a consciousness that in this country we have to deal with, and face. And so what you said with perception being everything, and Deron, what you were sharing about how that trauma, it goes deep.
Deep,
What we
very deep,
saw on the
very
night
deep.
of the Oscars, what it showed me was that wounds that are left unhealed eventually bleed into your future.
Yep, yep.
And and it's something that it's going back to that young man, uh who, like I said, in the school system, the young man who his father only related to him in the aspect of sports, but never talked to him about anything else. There are some fathers that only engage with their sons on a level of their performance of sports,
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
don't
Masculinity. Yeah,
actually deal with them
masculine things. Yeah.
masculine. That's right, emotionally. They don't get to know their sons on other levels. So the only relationship they have with their fathers is through one aspect of the relationship. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying one aspect of it, but with enjoying an aspect. But our sons need us to show up in every aspect, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, not just through our performance. And feeling like, okay, this is the only way I can relate to my father. And so, to relate that, God can't heal what we don't reveal. And I think we also have some really good comments in the chat too. I'm noticing. And one of my brothers from Goodman Doers, one of my friends, he asked, "How do we?" And I guess I'll throw this out to you guys. How do we as men develop how do Black men develop emotional intelligence? That was his question.
Emotional intelligence in what
Right.
sense? In what
Mm,
sense?
that's
Good
a
question.
that's a tough one.
That's what I said. In what sense? That's broad, but emotional intelligence,
You know,
being able to identify how we feel.
Yep. And I'll see if he comments again. But to that question, I guess I can share. Can I share my perception of the question
Yeah,
was?
most
go
definitely.
ahead on.
I think with emotional intelligence, what I believe he's saying is, how do we develop it? When I think of emotional intelligence, you're right, Lamar, it's very broad. I think of how we're able to honestly communicate and
Mm,
be transparent about
about
what
feelings,
we feel.
what we feel.
Uh, and with other men and with women as well. That's what I think of emotional intelligence. And a lot of us haven't been trained to know how to do that, because it's hard to be what you don't see growing up.
That's
It's
that's
difficult to be
that's
what you don't see. And if you
and
haven't seen that
that's
model,
the mentorship.
you haven't seen, it's very detrimental. And so this is why men, we need, there's a certain way that mom delivers truth, and then
Yeah,
there's a certain way that dad
and dad
delivers
delivered.
truth.
Yeah,
And both of them are totally different. And when you don't have both of those perspectives or both of those aspects, it can kind of leave you,
yeah.
can leave you
A level.
imbalanced, and
Yeah.
you're not level, because you're only used to hearing truth or seeing it modeled one particular way. And I think with the emotional intelligence, I think to answer your question, Ken, if you're still listening, brother, is the first thing we can do to develop emotional intelligence is admitting that we don't have it. If we don't have it, I think the way we find our way, the answer any question is the first start by admitting we don't know where we are. I mean, at
Mm,
first, as men, we have to be humble enough to admit that we don't have it all together, that we
mm,
don't know the answers. And
mm.
society does not make it easy for us as men to admit that we don't know what we're doing.
You
You
know,
know, so it leads to us dropping the ball in a lot of areas, because it's easier to say pretend like we don't care than to admit we failed.
I have a bunch of couple male friends in my life. A couple of them here in Charles County that I met here. One of them at home, Dr. Calvin Mackey, Tyrone. I can go name a bunch of them. It's called holding accountable for our actions. Um,
Yeah.
I have, social media. I'm always on there, and for me, it's entertainment. It's jokes. So every now and then, I'll say something that I let folks in and say something, speak some truth. But there have been times where I have posted something or said something on social media, and my phone rang immediately. And when I see a text from one of those brothers, I already know that I haven't stepped in it, and they're calling me to hold me accountable. Now, vice versa, there's some women in this community, and I'm not going to go back to Louisiana, but there's some women like Wanda Woodland, who I met since I've been here. Another one is my campaign manager, Ramona Oliver, that will hold me accountable. I have these, Ramona always said, I'm speaking, and she would grab me back and say, hey, have you thought about this? And then sometimes I get mad and I'm like, I don't want to talk anymore. But then I sit back and I realize it was for my best interest that, she was or he was helping me out. I see Jeff sometimes. We may, I may not see Jeff for weeks, and we see each other, and it's always positive. We're talking about different things, and it's just it may be a good 5 minutes, but we're bouncing things off each other. I called Henry today. I was having a moment, just things off of her. She talked me off of that ledge. I wasn't truly on the ledge, but we have to keep some solid people in our life. It's always to have some people. I call when you want to bullshit. Excuse my French. For the babies, I apologize. You can have some of them in your life, but also you have to have some people in your life with some balance. That brings some balance to your life and just let you know, hey man, you're wrong.
I wanted to say with the emotional intelligence piece really quickly. I miss the grandmas, I miss the grandpas, and I say that in a sense where we were able to, if not fully experience how the upbringing should be, we at least got a snapshot of what it could be and what we either wanted to do or not to do. And unfortunately, it's sad to say it that we don't have a lot of those figures in the house anymore. That gives us the examples to either make a determination if, like, man, I want to be like him, or there's nothing about him that I want to be. And so what we've chose to do, our children have chose to do, is we've chose to look at people on the outside of our families. We've chose to look at individuals that are not really interconnected with us to define where our future is. And so you have the child that's looking at how people are moving on the block and moving on the streets. You have that young girl that is looking at social media influences to make a determination of what she wants to do. And so I think it's very imperative that when we know what we need to know and we know the things that we know to be beneficial to our community, that we get involved, and that we're talking about this, I guess, next, mentorship, like reach one, teach one. This stuff is so important. Like, we used to be in a position where the community communed. Like, I knew my neighbor. I knew the person across the street. The teacher.
The rods go up, the rods go down.
Yeah, the teacher knew my mother. The officer knew my family. Like, we at a place now where we live next to a neighbor for over 10, 15 years, and we have never once met them. And so this whole level of emotional intelligence comes from my understanding, is being in a position, like Jeffrey said, to acknowledge that you don't know. But I believe that God got all the answers. And once again, I believe that we as a people have removed ourselves so far from God that now we're trying to figure it out. And to be frank, he's trying to let you figure it out. Since you say you got the answers, go ahead and figure it out. And what we're finding is that we don't have any solutions. And then we're looking to people that do not have a divine or spiritual sovereign mind to make the judgment for us and our families, and it won't happen. The only way that,
Well, let me throw a wrench on this, and we talk about God. I remember when I was coming up as a kid, we had churches in the community. And what I mean by that, we went to Vacation Bible School. My stepfather drove the bus. Summer camp. Some of our we don't have that family devotion communication in the communities. The black church was the pillar of the community. Nowadays, the churches, the 4 walls after Sundays, because the building is nothing but a single occupant use building. But now we go to church, no one knows each other, we get in our cars, we go home, garage door go up, garage door go down. So, I live here in the community where I walk down the street, I see the kids with basketballs. I say, "Hey man, let me get a shot." I'm out there talking to the kids. I want to shoot hoops with them, throw the football with them. We talk about the communities. I call it the garage show up, the garage go down. Our neighbors, and that's our problem. We have to get back to the roots, knowing one another. You said something about grandmas, and I'm not trying to be funny. Yeah, some of the grandmas 34, 35 years
Yeah,
old now.
yeah,
Mhm.
they turning up. They turning up with you. They turning up with you.
I went out, had a drink the other night, and sitting at the bar, the young lady and her husband, they're sitting there with their mother, they're sitting there with their daughter, and they're all sitting there having a drink together. Hell, I never had a drink with my mother. But that's what we're doing now.
Right.
I think the awesome responsibility though that we do have as a people that know truth and know what we should be doing, especially to encourage and to empower blackness and black men or black women. When we're integrated into these spaces, we have a responsibility. And I feel that a lot of us that get put in positions to become change agents are assimilating into the roles that we initially went in to transform. And now we're finding ourselves doing exactly the same things and creating and starting to have the same ideologies of the folks that we wanted to go in and help become better in their situations. And I find ourselves doing that. We ask and we pray to God to be put in different positions, and then we get moved into those positions to help our communities, and we assimilate in the same situations with the same people that initially beforehand we was talking about and ridiculing and had things to say about how we wish they would do things differently. And then we get the positions and powers to be put in place to do work, and we do nothing. We do nothing. And so for me, it's a discouragement, and it creates dissatisfaction. And our young people see that. Our young people see people in positions that look like us and doing nothing for the community. And they're serving in community positions. They're in political powers. They're in the churches, and they're doing nothing to really change the trajectory of what this community looks like. And it's a disappointment.
Yeah, it's so important. You all made very good points about the importance of having, those who can hold you accountable. Father figures, mentors, individuals that really can impact men in a positive way. Understand the importance of, emotional intelligence that we had mentioned earlier. There's so many different facets to, manhood and what that means. We talked extensively about that, from toxic masculinity. I wanted to even go into this idea of an alpha male and what's considered to be the idealized male in our society. You know, we be able to get into everything tonight just because of time's sake. I think we're going to have a part two, fellas. This is a really expansive line of discussion. So I'm really glad that we got this opportunity to air out a lot of these things that are going on with men, and you all being so forthcoming about what you yourself have experienced and those who you've known have also experienced. So understanding now, like, what are the solutions? We talked about depression, childhood trauma, how that can negatively affect men, living their lives in their physical health, mental, emotional health. So really looking at what are the solutions, the importance of having, the importance of friendships, of brotherhood amongst men. What is your perspective on just having that tribe, I guess you could say, that helps you, that will teach our young men, especially growing up, to become emotionally intelligent, to be able to be navigate what's going on internally, so we're not having outbursts, so we're not having mass shootings, so we're not on stage slapping folks. What is it that, these elements of brotherhood, father figures, mentors, what are your perspectives on that?
I believe, and I'm gonna say this quickly. Two things. I believe that we're so consumed with looking at everything around us, and if we can't change everything around us, I think the biggest responsibility is to change ourselves. I think, we remember the song Michael Jackson had years ago, Man in the Mirror. He literally talked about if you want to make a world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. I actually was reading this study and I want to share it with you. It was a study in 2011 and it was published in the Journal of Environmental Science and Technology. And it said, it was really cool. It said we shed between 0.03 and 0.09 kilograms of skin every hour. And then it says that sounds almost like nothing, but over the course of a lifetime, it adds up to about 35 kilograms or roughly half of your body weight. And I thought to myself, that's pretty interesting. That in order for the body to sustain itself, in order for us to matriculate from a child to an adult, for us to live and thrive, we have to shed. Like we literally have to shed to be able to get to the place that we are at. And I thought to myself, if we can have the same concept as men, as black men, when we're working on not others but ourselves, we have to use that same ideology when we look at the spiritual life of shedding, when we're looking at the social life of shedding, when we're looking at the mental perspective, that in order for us to get to what God has designed for us to be and to literally walk in the purpose-driven life that we're called to do on this universe, we're gonna have to shed. Our circle may have to change. Our perception of how we see ourselves is going to shift. The expectations that we once had that we haven't fulfilled, we got to leave that in the past. We have to now look at where we are and we have to move forward into the destiny that we want to become. And shedding is so important. If you're out thinking the friends that you have now, it's time to shed. Like literally, if you're moving in a different position in your life, as far as what you want to do in your career, in your profession, even in your spirituality, if there's a place that you want to grow in your faith with God, and there's people that's surrounding you that are not helping you get to that place, you got to shed. And so I believe this is something that we have to also share with our young folks. Don't be mindful of the things around you. What do you want for yourself? What do you believe you're called to do? Because there's something in this life that you can do that I can't do. I mean, there's a passage in the scripture that says your gifts will make room for you. There is something that you are called to do that I can't accomplish. And the world will never ever see it unless you allow it to unless you allow it to come to fruition, unless you allow your hands to be able to make those things take place. And it's something that we need to share with our young people, especially as black men talking to other young black men, to inform them of the mistakes that we've made, the situations we wish that was different, being transparent with them about even allowing them to express how they feel and being able to work together as a team to allow them to reach the higher extent of their life. I was blessed to have mentors in my life. If I didn't have certain men that came into my space outside of my father, I don't know where I would be. But through the grace of God and through these men that, like Jeffrey said, was humble enough to work with me, was humble enough to listen to me. And even at a place in their life, they shedded things in their personal space so they can get to the place to have clear understanding. And it's sad to say it, but a lot of us got to get to the place of growth. And some of us are older in age, but we still trying to live our second childhood. And that's a whole new deeper conversation to even get to. But a lot of us are trying to live our second childhood and not realizing and understanding that if the gray hair provides wisdom, that's what it's for. And God forgive me on what I'm about to say, but we got a lot of gray-headed fools. Just because you got gray hair don't mean that you wise. We got folks out here that is giving information that is not valid and that is not successful and will not help people thrive, especially us in our community. We got to do a better job. We got to hold each other accountable, and we got to be responsible with the accountability that we're holding each other with. That's important.
Yeah. Black excellence is achieved when we first remedy Black shortcomings. That's when excellence is achieved, when we start dealing with, and it's not saying that we have to be perfect.
Yeah.
No one is perfect, but we need what you're saying. That's what that brought me to. We have to start dealing with what has been haunting us for a long time. And that's what you're reminding me of. For example, when we talk about mentorship of young men, I'm a part of a team at my school called AAEEBB, Academic Advancements, Achieving Academic Excellence and Equity for Black Boys. It's
Love it.
funded by the state superintendent, myself, my principal. We launched this program at my school, at JP Ryan too, for over 150 boys, third through fifth grade. And basically, they're divided up into these houses where they each grade level represents their brotherhood or their fraternity house. They have core values. Monthly we will have competitions, healthy competitions to see who would achieve the most points, and they would get prizes for that. Um, for their performance in the classroom, outside of the classroom. And it was a way to provide mentorship. And so, basically the state superintendent, the previous, basically, it showed that the state showed that they saw the disparity and wanted to do something about it. And so we were grateful for that. But I had a situation this school year. One of my young men, he actually punched a girl in the chest in third grade. And when I found out about it, he looked, because I have a great relationship with my students. I believe in developing solid relationships. He looked ashamed and he did not even want to come approach me because he knew he was wrong.
Yeah, the respect
But when
level.
he came, I had a very serious conversation with him. He got consequences for it. But I had him stand up in front of the entire class, apologize to the young lady he hit, and apologize to the class. And he did so. And I told him, man, look, as an adult male and a young Black man, you got to understand, period. First of all, it's never okay to put your hands on a woman. But I also talked to him to ask him why.
Yeah.
I didn't just stand him up and just start going off on him. I said, why?
Wow.
What led you to doing this and feeling like this was the proper way? First, what was the problem? What were you angry about? And what led you to this?
Yeah. Yeah.
The first thing he said is that he wasn't even upset with the young lady. He was angry about something else, and she just happened to be in the way. She just happened to be there. And so she was the object of the person in which he took his anger out on. And so from that, a lesson came out of it for the class. I said, class, repeat after me, misplaced anger. And I said, Mr. Tyler has done it. We've all been guilty of it. And I asked him how, and I believe in asking my students is, how could you have handled that differently?
Goes back to Will Smith.
And let them come up with the solutions.
Misplaced
And they every time they tell me what they could have done differently, and I let them kind of counsel themselves. But I also share with him, you got to understand something. As a young Black man in this society, and as a male, period, this would not have gone well for you. If the police were called, this does not go in our favor usually at all. And especially with jail sentences, with everything that's been done in the justice system right now, I gave him the real scenario of what could happen to him, and it made him think. And the rest of the year, he did not put his hands on anybody else. And so these are the kinds of conversations, like you said, Lamar. The question is, whatever happened to Grandpa? Whatever happened to Pop? Whatever happened to great granddad? And we're not seeing these figures as much anymore. Or the values of this generation are completely different from the generation prior. And knowing that, we have to give it a totally different approach to this mentorship, to this brotherhood, to this counseling. There's so much that is missing. I have a young man in my class who from this year, who his father was murdered actually several years ago. His father passed it several years ago, and there's no father figure in his life. So really, in the class, I was the only father figure that he had, and he admitted that to me, and I saw vast improvements in him academically and emotionally and how he responded to situations. Even though he made mistakes, I saw improvements and other people saw improvements. And simply every morning that he came into class, I hugged him. Every day, I gave him a hug and asked him how he was doing. And so he came to expect that. But I'm sharing this to say, not just because I'm so great or anything like that, but just to share that every man needs another man that he can be vulnerable with and broken in front of without backlash. We need places, spaces where we can speak our piece in peace.
Yeah, without bringing out the piece.
With yeah.
Jeff, you said something. You are great. You are great for what you're doing. It's not a lot of African American Black men in the classroom, and I've always say I applaud you for it. There comes a point in time in life that we have to hold each other accountable. That young man that you met that was in your classroom. Hopefully, you made an impression on his life, and later on, he will make that same impression on someone else's life. I mean, I can think about my second grade teacher. She's still living, Miss Beverly Thompson.
Wow.
I love her. Every time I go home, I see Miss Thompson because she made an impact in my life. My fifth grade science teacher, God bless his heart, Mr. Lemon, used to live across the street from my mom's house. He made an impact on my life. My middle school principal, the Reverend John Brooks, he was a pastor too. He lived 5 doors down. He and his son, the best man in his way, and his son, we're good friends. Those were mentors in my life that I had. Not my mom and dad divorced when I was 6, 7 years old. My dad was only 5, 10 miles up the road. I could see him every day. My stepfather, he was in the house. But I had that village. When I went outside to do something, I just always look around because I knew one of them was going to see me. Nowadays, some of these kids now, they they do things and there's no accountability. And it's almost have
I think you froze.
Because you never know what they will say and how they're going to react. So it's a catch-22 on how you do it. But of course, Jeff is in an environment in a classroom where it can do it. For me to go outside in the street, sometimes I have to look and say, okay, is it okay for me to say this? You never know. And my last thing, I've had people in here in my community that say, well, you could be much nicer than mine. I'm like, okay, well, how can I be much nicer when your child just child? How can I say, well, little Johnny kid, come on. I mean, it's almost, it's a catch-22. Everyone in this whole thing is, you have to be nice to where you said, just me. I'm a Virgo. Tell me how I screwed up. Don't sugarcoat it. Tell me. I don't want to know, because if you sugarcoat it, it's like, come on, I went wrong. Tell me what I did wrong. But nowadays, you have to almost put yourself in a therapist role and want to talk to little Johnny. And I'm not a trained therapist.
You're not having any training for it, yeah.
Right. I don't have any training for that, but I can. I don't have any training on.
I wanted to say, Jeffrey said, where Papa at, and Grandpa and Dad. We already know systematically some of these folks are incarcerated and they dead, and that's by design. And so it's sad to say it that we have to be mindful that the folks that are present and that are here in real time be able to commit and be accountable and responsible. And I want to say this too. Oftentimes we are very intimidated or afraid because of the environments that we're in. Or either, do I have a place? Should I say something? This is not my child. I don't know what I should do. I don't know if I have the rights anymore. I don't know if I can reprimand them. I don't know if I can say anything to them. I truly believe, especially as a teacher, as a person in politics, one that works in the community, one that works medically. We have a due diligence to give back to our community. It takes a village to raise a child. We've been saying that all of our lives, but we really need to be about village business. And that
That's
simply
good.
means that we all have to be held accountable to be able to take care of our community as Black men and Black women. And that's important. And another thing I also want to say too is that we have to be very mindful that we are on borrowed time. And I say this all the time. I share this with folks. We all have an expiration date. We all have a moment in life that we are here to fulfill a purpose, and there is something that is required of us to do while we are present. And we got to get busy. We have to get to work. If mama not doing it, then I need to be able to help this child, support this child, and maybe I need to encourage mama in some way to give her the adequate resources so she can be the best mom that she can be. If I
Yeah.
know to do good and not, Scripture says it's sin, which simply means that if I know to do good and don't, it's going to eventually bring consequences, not on just me, but my entire community. And so this stuff is
Mm.
very important. We talk about people who are, we talk about other nationalities and, other races. Look at how they move. Look at the things that they do. And so we have to be very mindful and cognitive that at the end of the day, we are all we have. And we got folks that are incarcerated. We got people serving time. They 80, 70, and 80 years old. 60, I mean, they're great grandfathers that can be here, that can help give back to our community. Think about all the wealth and knowledge that they have attained while
Yeah.
they've been away, that they can implement back into our environments, giving them opportunities to be expunged and to get back into society and to work and to give back to children, to encourage children, to motivate children as Black men that now know the system for real, that have learned the in and outs of how to maneuver and finagle through our environment and our community. We need to be able to get our Black men and our Black women back into population, that they can be able to be an asset to our community. And this is all by design. This is all systemized to keep us fragmented and disenfranchised. And so when we know what we need to do, we need to get it done. And we need to stop looking at the person next door. We need to stop trying to figure out who's going to do it. We need to do it. Step up and get busy. If there's something that offends you or bothers you or make you feel overwhelmed, then love your neighbor like you love yourself. Be committed to the cause and be selfless about it. And like Jeffrey was saying, and not be selfish about it. This brother he hugged a young man. That's a level of vulnerability and there's a level of humility. You don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. But he chose to do that. He made a conscious decision to risk whatever it could take to be able to be an asset to this young man's life. And we have to get back to doing that in our community. We have to. We have to.
Mm. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow, this has been so powerful. This I'm just blown away, and listening to you men really express what's going on, the solutions that we need to come up with to help heal, to help reduce the amount of what we see in our communities, toxic masculinity, how that impacts negatively our community. These young men growing up, we want to have become productive and healthy men as they grow older, and to also impart wisdom to the next generation. It's so important. Tonight was powerful. We have unfortunately run out of time, but I definitely wanted each of you to be able to share any last thoughts or, words of advice, impact. And I also want you to share how people can get in touch with each one of you. I think there's going to be a lot of individuals who, connected and watched tonight that want to know more about the work that you all do in the community, as well as maybe even being part of the movement that all of you are involved in. So I definitely want us to, have this opportunity for you all to share that as well before we end tonight's webcast. I'm going to first announce, though, that we are going to have a part two to this.
Yes.
We did not even get to a third, maybe even a part three. Yes, Deron said three. And I think, Jeff, I told you, a couple of days ago, it's going to be a part two or three, because this
Yep.
is intense.
Yep.
Literally, got to a third of what we were, scheduled to discuss tonight. One third, I counted it. So we definitely gonna have a part two, and I'm glad. Thank you all for chiming in. Unfortunately, I could not view the chats and the comments and the questions. I believe Jeff, you were able to. Lamar, Deron, were you all able to see all the messages on? Okay,
I was
so
doing
I
the
had to
best I
pull it up
could.
on
Yeah.
my phone. So hopefully we were able to address a few things. It was more comments than questions, but thank you all for tuning in. Again, we will have a part two and a part three apparently. So I'd like to first start with you, Deron, to any last thoughts, and also how can people get in touch with you and be a part of whatever activities that you're in.
Well, first of all, Chinnery, I want to thank you for being
Yeah.
this gracious host. This was awesome. I want to thank you for your friendship. I really appreciate it. You are one of those ladies in this community that will stop me, and you have. Hey, Deron, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you for being part of my village. Secondly, Lamar, thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Love you. There were some good things. I got a lot of notes that I'm going to incorporate. Jeff, wow, man, love what you do. Keep doing what you're doing. I just want to love on you people, you guys. Again, my name is Deron Tross. I call myself let's see, the bullseye of Charles County. It's always hashtag Deron Tross. But actually, if you wish to reach me, you can reach me at dt1922 gmail, dt1922 gmail.com. Uh, and touch me. Here in Charles County, of course, shameless plug. I do think I'm the right person for the job, one or two positions, but most importantly, I just want folks in my community to vote and have a voice on who's going to lead for the next 4 years. That's important. It's a pivotal time in our community. But again, I want to thank all of you for allowing me, especially you, Chinnery. You didn't have to. In fact, when I got this, when you asked me, I was blown away. And I really appreciate it. But again, Jeff and Lamar, love you guys. And Lamar and Jeff, I will be in touch with you. I got your email addresses because after this campaign, I want to get back into doing COVID. That's all I did was host events like this. So I want to get back into it. So I will be back in touch with you guys. Yes, Jeremy, I'm still in front
of you. All right. All right. And thank you so much, Deron. All right, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you, Chinnery, again. Thank you so much for providing this platform for us to be able to help bring healing and bring insight and bring unity. And thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for caring about our well-being. And thank you. Essentially, you doing that means you're caring for people. And thank you for all that you do. I pray that God blesses everything that you set your hands to and your, Eze Healthcare. I pray Eze Health Center. I just pray nothing but blessings for you on that and all that you're doing, and we're here for you. To everyone, do not die a copy when you've been born an original. God can't heal what you don't reveal. That it is okay to say I don't know. It is okay to say I need help. It is okay to say I don't have it figured out because none of us has it all figured out. Just to encourage everyone that whatever you do, be the authentic you. Males look to be served, but men look to be of service. So I just want to encourage everybody to just continue being yourself and pursuing the call that God has for you. And I just had a great time tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Lamar?
Man, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with emotions. I sincerely I first thank God for just giving you, Shaneri, the insight and I would say, the courage to put a platform on like this and to
Yes.
be able to invite these great men that I'm able to sit next to in a box, uh, not literally but figuratively, and be able to share something that can encourage and motivate someone that is listening. I thank God for the opportunity that I have to be able to be here. And I just want to say just two things, and I bid everyone to do from my end. Yes, Kingdom Business Clothing is a brand that I've started, and the job is of this brand is to excite, encourage, and unite those to God, to draw them closer, to give them some type of awareness that this incredible being exists. And I know we have other things here, like Good Men Do Exist, a brand that Jeffrey is doing, which is awesome. And, he's rocking the hoodie, and my man Deron is doing some great work too, as he's running for office. But I just want to share this. Oftentimes we say to ourselves, we want to be the best version of me. I want to be the best version of myself. But I beg to differ. I think we should be the best version of what God has purposed us to be. And I think the best version of ourselves can change depending on the circumstances that our life brings us. How I am today can really change tomorrow. How I feel about myself today, depending on what adversity I'm faced with in life, can really alter my perception of myself, how I feel about my self worth, how I feel about my self dignity. And so, if we walk according to God's way and we move according to His beat, we will always find joy and we will eliminate happiness, because I believe happiness is based upon what's happening. If nothing is happening, then you ain't happy. And so we got to get to a place of joy and get to a place of being joyful. And so I do want to leave folks with that concept, that thought. If you are interested, you're dealing with some mental concerns, there's some areas of your life that you are very overwhelmed by, and you feel as if, maybe this has helped you, but you need some other encouragement from a medical perspective, or even from a professional perspective of training and teaching and therapy. You can hit me up at intentional the podcast at gmail.com. Intentional the podcast at gmail.com. And I say this is because God has blessed me to move forward to start my podcast / live broadcast. And what I would like to do is I would like to give you information that will be able to help and encourage you in this ministry and in this mission of life. And so it's intentional the podcast at gmail.com. I had a funny story to share. I shared on part 2. I think it will make you smile, bring joy to your heart. But know you're not in this alone. You may feel lonely, but you're never alone. And so God bless you.
Wonderful. Whew, I almost had some tears.
Anybody? Somebody play? Can somebody play? Can somebody? While we
Yes.
I heard Deron got the baritone over there. Can you sing something in the background?
Oh man.
While she shed those tears.
Oh man.
Yeah, but this was a blessing. I really enjoyed myself. Thank you guys.
Yes.
So
Oh
much.
my God.
This was awesome, amazing. I know I was able to read a few lines in the chat. People are definitely engaged and locked in. They want a part 2. They want a part 3. However many it will take for us to address all these issues. It's very expansive. Again, thank you all. If you like tonight's platform, if you don't mind, just like the video. It'll push the algorithm so more people are able to view it on YouTube. It will be available on replay, so you can certainly share with others who you feel may get some good information from what was discussed tonight. We're definitely going to do this again. And thank you all for tuning in. Again, my name is Shaneri Eze. I'm a health practitioner here in Waldorf, have a medical practice here. And I do these webcasts every month. I started doing these 2 years ago with a passion to talk about health and wellness outside of the medical realm, but really looking at emotional, relational health, mental health. These are things that are very important. So again, thank you all for tuning in tonight. More information, visit our YouTube page, Facebook. Charles County Matters, Good Men Do Exist, KBC, Kingdom Business Clothing. Definitely check them out. And until next time, thank you and have a good night.
Peace.